us now. Only love.
Well, folks, you could imagine we're having a wonderful time off camera as we listen to Fred, our newly appointed, newly assigned spokesperson for local government in Bay and Grantstown, as he is a spokesperson for many, many issues in this country. Fred, you've been very active, fighting the fight for the rights of persons in our country, both Bahamians and non-Bahamians, both legal and illegal. You've had some cases where the rights of people have really been abused, even in some cases by law enforcement.
Yes. It is unfortunate. I've been practicing law now for going on 42 years. In my view, human rights abuses have become so endemic and so systemic in our country. We are experiencing more human rights abuse than when I first began to practice. That has to do with increasing the population, and also with the internet, a lot more is known, a lot more is seen, a lot more is exposed. But our prison conditions, immigrant rights, rights of people who are not immigrants but who are born in the Bahamas, first, second, third generation now with no legal status. The rights of licensees in Freeport, economic rights, the rights of thousands of people who have bought property in the Bahamas from abroad to be able to participate in their communities. The human rights in violations by many police who abuse their powers, violation of rights and corruption by a lot of the regulatory and policing authorities in the women's rights, the rights of the gay community. I often can't get it right, the LGBTG, and there's now something else at the end of it,
yes.
Community. Children's rights. I mean, the level of sexual abuse of minors in the Bahamas that is swept under the carpet. Domestic abuse of women, some by women against men, but for the most part, women who just get the hell beaten out of them, and young girls who are raped within family settings and or by sex tourism that exists in the Bahamas. A lot of very wealthy people come from abroad, as they do to Haiti, as they do to the Dominican Republic, as they do to Mexico. There's a huge, this is why human trafficking, and I must take my hat off to Fred Mitchell, actually, in the previous government, and Minister Dames, now Minister of National Security, and others who have emphasized issues and challenges that we face from a human trafficking perspective in the Bahamas. And human trafficking isn't only taking children or women or young men out of the Bahamas for the sex trade. It is also those who are affluent coming into the Bahamas and abusing our children. And so human rights in the Bahamas is, I would wish that our government, and I beg the FNM, please, we have pretended to sign on to many international treaties under the umbrella of the United Nations, under the umbrella of the Organization of American States. But what we need to do is put the conventions and put the treaties into effect and make them part of our domestic law, so that Fred Smith and Paco Nunes and others, when our lives were at stake in 2016, we don't have to go to Washington to the International Commission of Human Rights to get the OAS to direct the government of the Bahamas to protect its own citizens.
Yes, that was unfortunate.
And so, we need to continue to embolden our Supreme Court. There's no sense in having a constitution that protects the right to access to court if you don't have a statutory system of legal aid for poor people on the civil and criminal side so they can access the court. So we talk a lot about rights. We publish in all of the international literature how we're a country governed by the rule of law, and we have a history of democratic governance, and we respect the rule of law. We signed every treaty under the sun. But within the Bahamas, the dirty little secret is very few people enjoy real human rights in the Bahamas. One thing, I know we're running short of time, I want to congratulate and commend Hubert Minnis. Hubert, well, I congratulate him for some things too. But Hubert, what was his name?
Ingram.
Ingram! But our former Prime Minister, several times, Hubert Ingraham, the one foundational change he made to the Bahamas was to open the airwaves.
Yes.
Can you imagine? And freedom of expression has become a fantastic human right which we enjoy in the Bahamas. Can you imagine what the Bahamas would be like today if the monopoly and the lock, so many children and young people in the Bahamas don't know that until the early 1992, 93, until the Tribune was given the radio licenses, a couple of others, Wendell Jones, I think, was one of the original ones. Until they got the radio and television licenses, ZNS had a lockdown on the communication between citizens of the Bahamas, between the islands, on the radio and television. And in our human rights organization, when we had town meetings and protests and demonstrations, and we wanted to...
It was ignored.
It wasn't heard.
That's right.
We had no means of...
That's right.
So there was no sense in having a constitution that gave us freedom of expression and communication if you don't have the means to do it. So now that with the dozens of radio stations that we have, the television studios, the internet, all of that has really undergirded our democracy in the Bahamas. So my hat's off to you, Hubert Ingraham, my former Prime Minister. As a Bahamian citizen, even though I was born in Haiti, I just want to rub that in a little bit so you all understand. Stop being so racist, xenophobic, and discriminatory in the Bahamas. Fred Smith, as a Bahamian citizen, is so grateful to Hubert Ingraham and the FNM party at that time for legislating and opening the airwaves. So that's the only reason we have a measure of human rights left in the Bahamas. Otherwise, the dirty secret is we have none here.
That is so sad.
It is, regrettably.
Yes, it really is, because we project ourselves as a modern democracy.
Yes. To the tourist that comes, it looks like
yes.
all that glitters is gold, but it really isn't. Behind all these closed doors, behind the walls of the prison, behind the societal institutions that we've set up, behind the secrecy in government, it really is bad in the Bahamas. And it hurts me, because I was born in Haiti and raised under the Papa Doc dictatorship with the Totomacuts. My mother was put in jail and we couldn't find her. My father was deported. He suffered a stroke because he lost everything that he had built over the years. My father's from Nicholstown, Andros.
Yes.
Rub that in a little bit. I do have Bahamian heritage after all. And so I have experienced with my family a dictatorship. And having been deported from Haiti, our family had to move back to the Bahamas. I don't want what can be the most beautiful and in many ways is a positive little nation in the world. It can be really better in the Bahamas if the politicians would just let go of the over-control, over-centralization, and dictatorship centralized system of government that we have, and realize we're all here to help. The citizenry of the Bahamas is available to help make it really better in the Bahamas.
Our next town meeting, as I said, was on the topic local government. The next town meeting is on the topic of campaign finance reform.
Yes,
Listen, we've got to take the big money out of our politics.
Yes.
Give me your views on that.
Well, I think we need to revise our electioneering machinery.
Yes.
There should be dramatic transparency. Hitherto, drug dealers and large-scale developers and foreigners, and there has been our politicians have unfortunately had to go and call for money from whoever they could, because it's expensive to have political
But it doesn't
campaigns.
have to be.
Doesn't have to be.
Doesn't have to be.
But because those who want to manipulate the system for whatever personal or selfish reasons exist have the opportunity to, it becomes a bidding war. And now our elections, it costs 20 to 30 million to have every election now in our little tiny community or country. And so we desperately need, and this is part of freedom of information.
That's right.
And so we desperately need campaign financing reform.
Absolutely.
So that politicians, the shackles which those who control them financially are burdened with, are released. So that we have representatives that can
That represent
act
the
upon
people?
principle, who represent the needs and the agendas of their constituency.
Because the adage
or
says
the
what?
nation.
He who pays the fiddler
Yes,
calls the tune.
that's right.
And when you have foreigners,
Yes.
and I'm very adamantly opposed to any foreigner,
Yes.
any non-Bahamian
Yes.
contributing in any way
Yes.
to any election process in this country.
Yes.
And we must get to that. So that's the second town meeting that we are planning.
Election financing is,
Yeah,
is a big issue. And
very
divorcing the control that is inherent in big political contributions. being
Absolutely, absolutely. And so,
And it also takes away the challenges which our politicians would be faced with.
that's right.
Many of them don't want to go begging,
That's right.
but they have to.
And it also excludes those who would want to come and
Yes.
make a contribution,
Yes.
but do not have the financial capacity and are unable to get it.
Or unwilling
Unwilling
to go and beg
from
and
where they can
sacrifice
get
their
it from.
principles
That's right.
to that.
That's what we have to do.
Yes.
So that's the second town meeting you're committed on television to being a part of. Let me see if I can come up with a third before we go. But these are discussions we need to have.
Yes.
And we
yes.
need to have courageous people and people who can speak truth to power and not just bend to the power of the powerful.
Almighty dollar.
Yeah,
I mean, we have
exactly.
sacrificed so much in the Bahamas on the altar of the Almighty.
That's right. Who says you need all these T-shirts for an election and the parties and the handouts and all of the...
Those will come.
Yes.
Those can also come by expanding the
That's right.
breadth of the contribution.
That's right. That's right. But limiting the local contributions from corporate and private
Yes.
citizens, but eliminating contributions from foreign.
I tend to agree with you. I agree with you.
That's the next town meeting. Fred, you have touched on a number of things, but the human rights as it relates to that large group of residents, some Bahamian, some non-Bahamian, make up that Haitian kind of community. Where do we go from? When the shanty towns are removed, what's going
Well,
on?
I am opposed, and I wish to emphasize my opposition to this attempt to demolish shanty towns. I mean, we call them shanty towns, but some of them are communities that have been there for decades and decades.
And contain the investment of a whole lifetime investment of a whole
And
lot of
it's
people.
easy for the more affluent politicians or for the affluent members of society to say, oh, they're unsanitary and they're disease-ridden and that the immigrants are there and there's not a crime. Well, as they did in the favelas in Brazil and many other places in the world, paint them. I mean, these are just random thoughts. But rather than destroy the shanty towns, rather than bulldoze them down, bring sanitation, bring waste management, bring electricity, bring regulation. Stop saying they're unregulated developments. And this government and the past government, FNM and the PLP, have watched someone like Peter Nygaard rape the environment out at Clifton in a completely illegal and unregulated way. But because he's white, because he's rich, and because he's a foreigner, and because he has corrupted the body politic and governance in this country, as well as the morale of thousands of youngsters in this country, they turn a blind eye to his aberration out at Nygaard Key. But and it was remarkable, the study that Minister Folks had done recently demonstrated that 70% of the residents of the shanty towns are not illegal immigrants.
That's right.
So you have Bahamians, you have Bahamians of Haitian descent, Jamaican descent, African descent. You have people on work permits. You have people who have permanent residency. Some people have spent years, brick by brick, putting a little concrete block up to build what other people would say is their shack. But it's it's their home. It's their castle. It's their right to privacy. And hitherto, you've had immigration and police raiding these places and going through them and breaking doors down, breaking windows down. We have no respect for people's privacy in the Bahamas. Yes, for the rich communities behind walls with their canals and with their private security. I don't see the police or immigration breaking through the walls, the gates of Albany, or Lyford Key or anywhere else to go and pick up what we know are hundreds of people working back there without work permits.
Yes.
But they're mostly white or Filipino or from elsewhere, and they're untouchable. But the poorest, the blackest, the most politically weak, and the politically disenfranchised because they can't get their citizenship, and the financially weak in our society, Bahamian and or foreign, will be repeatedly abused by our own government. I don't know why we don't stop abusing poor people. And this is the VAT as well. Instead of reforming our tax laws, it is so much easier to default into a position where you just hike up the VAT. So the poorest in society are the ones who are subjected to the paying, in relative terms,
that's right,
more taxes.
More taxes.
Income tax.
Easy money.
It's important to reform the law to bring in income tax so that the more affluent contribute. We need money for our schools, for our hospitals, for everything in this country.
Fred, I have to stop you.
Sorry.
No. Let me tell you why. Because you have just been advocating most of the things that the Bay and Grandstand Advancement Association has been standing for and advocating for years, which leads me to consider appointing you a director. See, that's why I say you have to stop. You're talking yourself into more and more commitments, because you talk about the poor and the black, and people get a little uncomfortable when you start talking about black, but it's true. The poor, the black, the powerless, the disconnected, they suffer more than others. Absolutely. And that's what we have been saying, and that represents a lot of the people in the community that we represent. Therefore, I think, but maybe we are overloading you perhaps by trying to put you on.
I've got my environmental, my human rights, my legal.
Okay.
I've got a lot on my plate.
We won't put you on the Bay and Grandstand board, but certainly you are trapped for the next 2 town meetings. You touched on something about Clifton, and I was thinking we've come to the end of the program actually, but we've not really looked at Clifton. I need help even in trying to secure that Sea Park and all the other things, but that will have to be another show.
Yes, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. It's okay. I just allow you to run, but we are grateful for your coming on this program, and I'm sure our viewers appreciate that also. No matter what anyone may say about Fred Smith, Fred speaks his mind. Fred has been consistent in his expressions. Fred has been consistent in his criticism of the administration. It doesn't matter which administration it is. Fred speaks truth to power, and that is what we need, particularly at this very precarious time in the development of our country, because we seem to have lost a bit of confidence as a people as to where we are going, because so many things are happening around us. So many external factors are. You're listening, the IMF is saying this, Moody's is saying that, the EU is saying the next thing.
Basic things that we need to come back to the simple things we need to deal with. Very basic, fundamental issues facing human beings in the Bahamas.
And get our people together. This is our country. And whatever challenges we have to face them together. Fred, you must come back real soon, because we have not touched on a number of things that I'm sure our viewers would benefit from your perspective. So give me one final comment before we go.
Oh my goodness. I am so in love with my country.
Yes.
I have nowhere else to go. And I'm now in my 60s. And so I'm starting to feel that I'm running out of time to effect positive change. I know you're a youngster still. I think you're younger than me.
Oh, absolutely. Much younger. But not really. I'm older than you.
I am anxious about being able to help to educate, to share in a way that people don't. I criticize not to bring anyone down, but to expose and highlight situations. And I have so much to share.
Yes.
And so this kind of opportunity I'm very grateful for, because we need non-partisan growth in this
Yes,
country.
yes.
And I'm running out of time, but I'll still make my contribution.
And I
for
know
Livermore.
you'll fight to the end, because I believe our viewers would want to hear an in-depth analysis of the Freeport situation,
Yes.
which you have not. You touched on Freeport, but you've not gone into it. What the way forward as you see it. I've heard you talk about that. I've read it in the papers, and I think our viewers would love it the next show.
Yes.
Fred, once again, thank you, my
Thank you
friend,
very much,
for being with us, and I'm so grateful that you accepted the invitation, and I'm sure our viewers appreciate it. So, folks,
Thank you all very much.
You've been watching Moving Forward, and we are so grateful that you took time out this evening of your busy schedule to just be with us a little while. I'm sure you appreciate Fred, and you're looking forward to having him back. And so until next time, we say good night. God bless you.
Only love can save us now. Only love